Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel, and welcome to a very happy moment, at least to me personally, and I wanted to share with you guys. Remember a while back we did a video on this ES300 and we were still having issues with it, and to make a long story short, you can watch that video, I'll leave it here. This ES300 was taken to a dealership, taken to multiple shops. They could never spend the time with it. It's not that they can't figure it out. They never spend the time with it and actually appreciate it and get it running. Well, I'm happy to report that this car is done. It's actually getting picked up tomorrow. We fixed everything that it has. It's running as new as it should run because this thing only has 74,000 miles. It actually crossed 74,000 miles in our testing. And in today's video, I'm gonna say a farewell and just talk a little bit about what we found, what we did, and why it's fixed. You'll hear it run, and at the end of the video, we'll give you a quick tour of what's going on in the shop as well. Let's get that intro rolling. We'll talk about this ES300. Let's hear this car run, because in the previous video I did not want to start it because we were not done with it, but now it is done and it runs as it should. You guys ready for this? Because these engines just sound beautiful, and I want to observe what it does when I start it with the idle. You notice that rev up? This is the sound of an extremely healthy 1MZ FE. Runs perfectly fine. Don't want to rev it too much. It's a little cold. Runs pretty good. I love this engine and I love how this turned out. This became kind of a point of pride for us here. I can't believe that this is gonna leave tomorrow. We just kind of really grown fond of this car. Let me shut it off before we suffocate, me and Jose. And then we'll talk about what we actually found with it. So here's kind of a rundown of the timeline and everything involved here. So this car initially was stalling and kind of not restarting and whatnot. Eventually got to a point where it completely died. Dealership and a shop really tried, but unsuccessfully. The dealership toward the end basically flat out said, we don't have technicians old enough, parts are tough, we can't work on this car. And they actually send it our way. Well, this is a common thing with these old ones. The ECUs, the capacitors leak, and that was that. You guys know about that if you watched the previous video. We fixed the ECU and the car started and ran, but then we started having all kinds of other problems. The first one was, when it started cold, it would not idle up. It would run really poorly, and it hesitates, and it doesn't want to stay idling sometimes. And then when it warms up, it's fine, but still, I observed with some diagnosis, it was running lean, too lean at idle. Only at idle. Everything else off idle when it's warmed up is fine. And then the other thing that I was doing, I throw a check engine light for a thermostat. And I noticed as soon as you drive it, temperature would just plummet down, and eventually it set it up. Now, even though this is an OBD1 car, it was actually set up for OBD2. So here is how this went. Usually, shops, when they fix cars, they are there to put food on the table. This became kind of a mission for us because I really got offended with the fact that some shops hinted to the owner that maybe you should junk it because it's just too much. This is not fixable. Nothing is not fixable if you're willing to put enough time and unfortunately cost, because this did get a little expensive toward the end. Not astronomical, but we did put a lot of time into this car, and that is the fact here. But it became a personal mission of mine. I want to see this car run. I do not accept that even though it's an old car, it's a 94 ES300, it has 74,000 miles. You can't junk a car like this. So clean. It's pristine, for lack of a better word. Here's what we found. One of the shops that went, how should I say, parts cannoning, I guess. They replaced the mass airflow, they replaced the idle air control, they replaced the EGR, they actually replaced the catalytic converters, they did the timing bell, and there's just a lot of stuff in pursuit of what was stalling this car, which was the ECU to begin with. But they ended up putting an aftermarket mass airflow, which is a huge no for any Toyota or Lexus. Never put an aftermarket one, ever. Because after a lot of testing, It was actually a mass airflow that was causing the lean running at idle when the car was warmed up. So we were kind of dealing with two problems. We ended up actually, it's discontinued, and I found one out of very questionable source, new OEM, and they wanted over $1,000 for it. I'm like, well, that's too much of a risk. We're not going to go that route. So I ended up getting actually a used one, original. It was a little bit of a gamble, but at least we were not paying a ridiculous price. I think this mass airflow ended up being like $150. I mean, we can take a risk. Cleaned it up, checked it, seemed legit, so we put it in, and it actually worked. But then the second problem was still there. I noticed that the car did not idle up. And when it's cold, these cars are supposed to idle up, just like you heard it, and then when it warms up, it'll idle down and be back to normal. It was not doing that. There's a very complicated system in these cars that gets the fuel pressure high when you're cold. And this got taken out later in the kind of the revision of the 1MZ, but this one still had it. And the way that works is air gets cut through the idle air control to a little solenoid, and then basically the fuel pressure goes to max, and you have your kind of rich on cold start. Well, this was not doing that. So I decided, you know what, let's take that idle air control, maybe it's clogged, let's clean it up, see what's going on with it, because it's not doing that and it's supposed to do it. Well, I take it out, and it was this horrendous aftermarket one. The minute I saw it, looks brand new on the inside, I'm like, this is not gonna work. Well, I actually have that valve. Let me go get it real quick so you guys can see it. And here is the ugly fender. These markings are of aftermarket. You notice it doesn't say Toyota or ASAN, not ASIN. This is a little bit before the time of ASIN. So basically what this valve does, if you notice these chambers, when you close the throttle plate, basically you're not on the gas, this starts bypassing air to let the car idle. But then it also has coolant going through it so it doesn't freeze. And then this one is what actually does the idle up stuff. And the computer controls this electronically to, it's a stepper motor that changes how much air is going through to let it idle up or idle down. Well, just look at this. Like this little sealer hanging out here. It almost looks to me like somebody's been here. But I actually went as far as I ordered one of these after, because I found which company this was, and we're not going to say that company, it's just one that you should avoid. Let's put it this way. I ordered one exactly the same to see why was it like this. And guess what? I got a new one. It was exactly the same. So that's how these are. Nobody's been inside here and messed it up. No. This is how they are. And that's really horrible. So this part, of course, is the first iteration for the 1MZ, and it is long discontinued. And I will not put another aftermarket one if my life depends on it. This is another part. You do not put an aftermarket one for these cars. So here's how we actually got an original one, brand new. I scoured every single source that I deal with. Nothing. Not a single person carries one of these. Then I found one on a random website that I don't really trust very much. They wanted close to $900 for it. It's a questionable source. Again, we're not going to gamble. I mean, I would leave that as a last resort, but I was not done. We kept looking and looking. I tried some better aftermarket brands, nothing. The only one you can find is similar to this, which doesn't work at all. So I ended up finding one supplier, one of the suppliers we deal with. They had not a Toyota one, they had an ASAN one. But they did tell me that it was the last one they had. They don't know if it's damaged. They don't know if it's swapped out because the box is really heavily damaged. They basically told me, we'll send it to you. If you like it, use it. If not, just send it back and it'll sit on the shelf for another 20 years because that's literally how long it's been there. Not 20 years, but it's been there for years and years. Nobody touches it. I think it was worth a shot. I got the part. Would you believe that I opened that box that said ASAN? It actually said Toyota ASAN on it. It was an original Toyota part. These were different days, folks, when Toyota actually let their suppliers put their Toyota labeled part in their own box. That was pretty cool. I checked it, made sure nothing was damaged on it. No, the box was mangled, but the part was perfectly fine. Put the part in, fire it up, it ran perfect. We did a lot of testing here to make sure that we're not missing anything, that all these parts are working properly. Everything works. This runs so good. We immediately did the thermostat. We continued driving. The battery is kind of, the owner came in, took this battery to where they bought it from, which was the shop that did the some of the parts cannoning here. They tested it and told them it's good. It's back. We charged it. It's working okay, but I feel like if you leave it for up to a week, it'll be very weak. And we checked for parasitic draw, nothing. So he's gonna keep an eye on the battery. That's the only thing that it needs. But believe it or not, this car that is from 1994 does not need anything else. No oil leaks, no exhaust leaks, no suspension work needed. Maintenance is all caught up. It needs nothing. That's the best part. And this car was supposed to be destined for the junkyard. Folks, there is no, I will say this honestly, in fairness to my hardworking brothers that work in this industry, there is no magical powers or extensive knowledge that was involved in fixing this car. Any mechanic can actually figure this out. But the problem is the automotive industry, how it's set up in a way to make technicians not be able to effectively fix cars like this because they require time. Just to give you a timeline, this car has been in our shop for close to 4 months. 4 months is how long it took for us to read, not continuously obviously, because we have other cars, we have other customers, we can't just drop everything and focus on one car, but this is how long these things take. And then once we get to a part, okay, I need this part, well, it'll probably take me 3 weeks to research and call and do this and look at that and kind of spend the time to find these parts, and until they come in, and then until we have the time to get into the car and get everything going, because once you start a job, you can't just stop it halfway. In some of our videos, you've seen this car in the background with the hood open and things are covered. That's when we were actually doing this. And I have started on it, and I noticed that the gasket that came with it was mangled. I think that's what happened. So I ordered another gasket, and that took a while to come in. That gasket is available, thank God. Same thing with the throttle body gasket. It was all mangled up. But runs perfectly fine, folks. I am really happy. So we gave you a small tour of this car in the previous video. I won't do that again, but I want to show you one thing, that is that trunk. Let's go check that out. Let's open the trunk here. I want to show you something that me and Jose were talking about earlier, so I thought it was really cool. So I don't know if you remember cars from this era where the trunk opened and the rest of it stayed. Just look at this area right here. I don't even want to touch it. This is a car from 1994. We are in 2024, and this part of the trunk looks like nobody even touched it ever since it was new. It doesn't have a single mark on it. Look how clean. I mean, it's a little dusty here, there's a few things, but look how clean everything is. And that's the best part. It just reminds me of a time where we didn't really care about load floor. Look how high this is. I mean, you want to put something heavy here, you have to carry it all the way up and in. Well, that's how cars were. And something interesting here, these taillights, we actually had to take the taillights out. We were testing something. These taillights, you can't access the bulbs. You have to take the entire taillight and have like million little 10 millimeter nuts to take it out. And just having this trunk with nothing on it. Usually cars today, you have some kind of taillight or part of the trunk comes out, but just having this is something a little nostalgic, and listen to that sound. Something else with this car that didn't work right actually was the turn signals. They flash fast. I was not extremely happy with the flasher. This is something very common with these, so to kind of future-proof it, we did put a flasher on it. It's very inexpensive. But something with these headlights, for reasons beyond me, this is again Lexus's thing, they put a little circuit board right here that connects the light to where the socket is, and that circuit board gets corrosion, and for some reason it changes the resistance of the bulb, and now it hyper flashes. So we got already that taken care of. In case you have an ES300, I don't know how many of these are still around, this works properly now. So if you have an ES300 and you're only the early ones, not the later ones. You have this one-piece headlight. Check the circuit board if both bulbs are good and correct, and they hyper flash. And something about old Lexuses, I don't know if you guys know this, the lock unlock is actually on the side of the key. It's actually locked right now. That's unlocked. This is something very interesting about these when they had the lock unlock here. I am almost to a point where I am sad to see this go, but that's the whole point. We had to fix it so the owner would enjoy it. This car needs a little bit of a detail. We tried to clean it because it's been really dusty. It's been here for a long time. I think if they detail this car, it's really going to come back to life, because this is the time where Lexus really went above and beyond for their paint. I'm going to miss this car. And I thank you guys first for joining us on this journey, but biggest thing is huge shout out to John, who's the owner of this car. He's truly a fine gentleman, very patient with us. We really appreciate him believing in us, and I kind of took this to heart, because this is such a beautiful car. This will never be in a junkyard. So if you own an ES300 and you want some rare parts that you can't find anymore, I am sorry that I deprived you from having this one. This one is too nice. Before we end up the video, let's give you kind of a quick tour of what's around us in the shop. Now, this is not all the cars in the shop. We have like 15 cars outside, but let's walk you through a few things. First thing is, this is, I want to say 2016 or 17, I think it's 17 actually, RX 350 with the updated 2GR. This is the 2GR FKS, which you see it proudly standing in our table right here, because of, I'll give you 3 seconds to guess. Front timing cover, of course. This is the only Achilles heel of this engine. Not a huge leak, but still the owner wanted to fix. This is too nice of a car, too new of a car to not have it fixed, I guess. And this bracket is actually designed by, this is not an official Toyota tool or anything. This is designed by a technician. Wish I had their contact info. I'll try to look them up and leave them on the screen. Fine gentleman actually designed this basically in his home, because he works on, I think he works at a Lexus dealership. This is a lifesaver if you're doing this job and doing this particular setup, even if you're doing a water pump, because it allows you to remove this mount. This is the difference, by the way, if you own one of these cars, the difference between the old style and new style, the mounting. So we no longer have a mount here. We actually have the mount right here and on the other side, and that sits right at the side of the body, right there, right in this area. And then this is a transmission mount. You notice how they're sitting on the body, not sitting on the subframe. That's the difference between them. This GX470 right here. So you guys have seen this car actually in another, I think, mini shop tour at the end of one of the videos. This one was here for an air-fuel ratio sensor. We've replaced the catalytic converter on this probably right when we opened the shop, one side. Now the other side went. And we also are doing timing belt. This is actually complete. The only thing that kind of delayed us on this one, the fan clutch was stuck. And when we took it apart, it's like, all right, we got to get a fan clutch. This is the time. So this is actually completely complete. They're going to pick it up, I think, tomorrow or the day after. This 100 series Land Cruiser, very nice Land Cruiser, a little modified, but it's really in good shape. Just have right around 200,000 miles. Couple things, another shop did wheel bearings and put the wrong grease on the wheel bearings, and they actually, one side got loose and it was getting really bad, progressing very badly quickly. So we redid the wheel bearings. They used some questionable aftermarket ones. Wrong grease, that's a big deal. Don't use the wrong grease on wheel bearings. We redid the wheel bearing, but the main thing that it actually brought it in the shop is a parasitic draw. So you leave this car sitting for 2 days, it just kills the battery. And that's a bit much. Usually these cars, they draw a lot of power from the battery even when they're sitting still, but usually you'll see it after a week, 10 days. You'll kind of have a little bit of a slower crank. 2 weeks and up, you might kill the battery. That's pretty standard with these, but not a day or two. What we found in this one after a long time, because some of these parasitic draw diagnoses, it just takes forever, because you're jumping around the car, taking things apart. The combination meter, or the gauge, sorry, combination meter is like the technical term for it. The gauge, something is staying alive inside the gauge and not allowing things to shut down. So the owner actually is a little bit on a budget, and he's okay jump starting it, and he wanted me to wire, like a switch to the fuse, and I told him, well, let me see what I can do. There's something we can temporarily put on without disturbing the harness, but I'm arriving at a conclusion. That's not why I opened the shop. You got to fix the car right, or you could just pull the fuse. I'm not gonna kind of make a secondary mechanism to bypass. You gotta fix the car right or don't fix it. That's the only thing that I'm at. We actually haven't discussed that with him. I'm just verifying a few things before we talk that final talk, but at least figured it out. This actually took a long time here, because you kind of have to go component by component. It's one fuse, ECUB, that basically powers the entire car, so you got to go component by component until we figured it out. Combination meter. This 12 Camry is in for a torque converter, which I just started this morning to pull it in, just to kind of give it a quick once over, and it had a huge rattle from the VVTi gear, so we're gonna actually have to, this is for next week, it's an early drop off from out of town. We're gonna have to talk to the owner, because this would be the time to put a VVTi gear. We're gonna have the engine out, do the torque converter, you want to put the gear, that would be the time. This is, we're going to call this a VVTi gear section, because this Matrix with a 2ZR, also VVTi gear. This one is actually getting scheduled for later. They dropped it out just for us to verify and make sure. I think a couple CV boots leaking on this one, and noisy aftermarket suspension struts, but where this one is actually getting picked up tomorrow. We're going to reschedule it because we are really overbooked right now with things that are, we can't just take any job, and I've noticed that it has left its mark in our shop. That is something we're gonna have to look into first thing in the morning, because we actually finished this car, we topped off the washer fluid, we parked it outside, and this is the first time we got it in, and now we have a little leak we're gonna have to investigate. Interesting. That's sometimes I like when cars sit here, because then you discover stuff like this. Because when you get the car in, you fill up with fluid. By the time it leaks past the covers and everything, you already got the car out, customer took the car, then found that out later. But when they sit here is when you start noticing stuff like that. Interesting. Moving on. We have this beautiful 100 series. This car, I really like. This is my favorite color in the 100 series. It's a Lexus LX470, but you know, it's a 100 series. This is one of my favorite colors in this car. And the minute they drop this car off, I smile. I love this color. This is one of my favorite colors. But this one is, we're almost wrapped up with it. This was timing belt. We're having cleaner. We haven't even blooded actually. Timing belt, water pump, and AHC fluid service, spark plugs. And it's 100 series. You're not going to get big stuff on it. Checked out pretty good in the inspection. Didn't really find anything else. So I think tomorrow morning, gonna bleed it, do the AHC. Everything else is already done. Clean it up, drive it. Kind of do the final checks. This one is flying the day after tomorrow. It's going back home. And something interesting about these, and I'm looking at these tires. These tires are very old. I want to see the date on them. I don't have it. There we go. 10-year-old tires. Bad idea. I think this is the only thing that needs taken care of in this car. Just, I don't know if you remember, when was the last time you saw Michelin written out like that? When you see stuff like that, as soon as this car came in, I saw that, I'm like, these are very old tires, because they don't even have this particular type of tire. Now, over there, we have this GX. It's just in here for a head gasket. Not a big deal. I'm just kidding. This is the new GX. We actually just got it from Lexus. We're gonna do a review on it. You know, let's not give impressions already, but we're actually driving it, testing it, really going through it, because we are very excited for the new GX, so you'll see that soon. Supra update. Engine's back. There's a couple things I'm not happy with, and I'm working on them slowly, but we already have it on the schedule. So here's how things work with cars like this. When we get parts for it, we kind of resume the project, but we can't just jump everybody else and stop the whole shop because of one car. So we reschedule it on the schedule. When that time comes, we start on it immediately and just get things done, and it's done. So this car still have a minute to go, but everything is back. We have everything we need except a couple things that I'm working on kind of behind the scenes. And something we kind of skipped over, a couple things actually, important things, at least to me. One of my awesome viewers, one of you, send us this, the kind of an extended table, I don't know what you call it. You climb on it if you have a high truck you're working on. You kind of lean on it so you're not leaning on the car or kind of hanging over. Huge shout out to that person. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you guys when you send stuff. You don't have to, but it just means the world to me. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. For privacy reasons, I'm not going to share your name information, but you know who you are. Thank you so much. And then in the very back, we have that's a 2A ZFE. Unfortunately, that one did not fare well with the oil burning, and it ran very low in oil. And yeah, I don't think that block is salvageable or anything is salvageable in that engine. So we may end up doing a video on this because I want to talk a little bit about used engines. So that's a used engine, but we're going to actually go through the engine. We got the used engine here. We're good with it, but I'm going to go through it and kind of update a few things because I don't want to just put this engine and then a year from now we have the same problem of oil burning again, because these engines were born with this problem. Super engines all the way in the back, at least the block. Say hello to it, but you'll see that on video because we're actually filming that Supra kind of coming back. But folks, just look at this. To me, this makes me smile. Looking at this car, it's running, it's done. I'm actually, as soon as we stop the camera, I'm going to go pick up the phone and tell the customer we are ready. They're actually local, and if they tell me they want to come today, sorry, Jose, but we're going to have to wait for them because I cannot wait to see their faces when this car starts, runs. We have put a lot of miles on this car, making sure it's 100%, and I am happy. I'm really happy with this car. The only thing I'm not happy about is seeing it leave, because it's such a beautiful car to look at. It's in such good shape, folks. This needs a really good, proper detail. I mean, we cleaned the car, we cleaned it up a little bit, but we're not detailers. This deserves a proper detailer to go through it. It's beautiful. Total time capsule. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.